Welcome back, my little soul searchers, to
What to Watch Now,
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about Netflix's newest original comedy. I feel like I'm talking about the originals a lot. Dead to Me! Whee! Quickie synopsis. A series about a powerful friendship that blossoms between a tightly wound widow, Christina Applegate, and a free-spirited Linda Cardellini with a shocking secret. Which is probably one of the worst descriptions. I don't think that makes you want to watch the series at all, but you totally fucking should. Holy shit, it was so good. It had a lot of layers going on, and I was very pleasantly surprised by the continuous twists. When I first saw the trailer, the general trailer is telling you is like Christina Applegate's character is kind of like sarcastic and hardened, and she's just become a widow, and she doesn't grieve like the other girls. And the big twist, because that's not enough, it's not enough to just watch people go through fictional pain. You need to add a quirky twist to it, and it was that Linda Cardellini is not who she seems, ends up living with her, is a kind of a wackadoo stranger, can you trust her type vibe. And I thought they gave away the secret right there, that she was somehow a stalker or crazy in some way. And then when I went to go watch the series, oh no, that is not the twist. The twist is so much better, and, well, she is, in fact, not as Looney Tunes as you think she is. It's so good. Before going into this, I just want to comment that I fucking love Christina Applegate, Linda Cardellini, James Marsden, who you'll probably most recognize him from, 27 Dresses and Westworld, Teddy. The whole time, I kept calling him Teddy, in my head, even though his character's name is Steve, and I kept calling Christina's character Christine. I was giving them all their fictional names. But anyways, when these actors get together, it is so ooey, gooey, and warm for me. They always deliver. They have a particular likable factor about them that puts them in reality and makes them likable. And then this is taking all those people you've come to love through their body of work and just making them attack each other. It is so good. So let's get into this whole thing. But before we do, I just want to take this moment to remind you that you can subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. Please feel free. Tell a friend, tweet at me what you think about the show, or just come follow me and what I have to say. And if you would like, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can become a Patreon supporter for as low as $1, and I have a bunch of cool ass content I add regularly on there. So it's a way of helping this show exist, while simultaneously, I give you even more cool content. So please feel free to become a Patreon supporter today. So going into the show. I got a little text. Oh, sorry, I'm having a moment. My boyfriend just texted me, said, I love you, have a great rainy morning. Okay, sorry, that's sorry about that. So our main girl, Christina Applegate, is playing Jen Harding. And she's just recently, unfortunately, lost her husband in a hit-and-run incident. So that's, pretty freak accident situation and terrible. And she clearly really loved her husband. She really misses him. And she feels all alone. She feels like she's struggling to deal with it. And I think the biggest thing she's struggling with and she's fixating on is the fact that it feels like the police aren't really doing anything to solve her case. Apparently they said, and I don't know if this statistic is correct or not, but it seems somewhat true, that apparently only 8% of hit and runs actually get solved, which is so sad. And it's moments like these that it's I'm sure behind the scenes there's a reason for all of the process, and it's a good thing, but man, in moments like these, it's what the fuck is the point of this, system if they're not gonna do anything? But we'll get into that. Don't worry. So Jen's doing her thing, and she's grieving with this matter at hand, and she's generally an angry person, and she at her Friends to Heaven for Friends or something. It's a religious support group, which I still never got a confirmation why she was in, because she's clearly not religious, and only her friend is, but nobody in her family is. I'm thinking it's just the closest support group in her town is why she was in it. But she ends up meeting Linda Cardellini's character, Judy Howe. And Judy immediately befriends her, and they bond about how they're both grieving and going through a hard time, and they can't sleep. And they just kind of hit it off, because even though Judy's a lot more like softer and nice, she's still very real with Jen and allows... I think Jen probably likes her because at this point in her life, Jen is very extra prickly and tends to push people away with sarcasm and intense, direct, kind of almost mean sense of humor. And she just doesn't take it on. And that's probably the first time Jen's experienced that in a really long time. But this is where the twists keep mounting one after the other. So the first big twist is you learn that she didn't have anyone, she didn't technically lose anyone. Like, she says she lost her own husband, but actually, when she goes to her house to kind of hang out as friends, she finds out that her husband is alive and that he, in fact, says she's crazy and that clearly she seems like some sort of stalker. And Christine immediately feels like, who the fuck have I been talking to? She already doesn't open up easily to people. You can imagine anyone feeling like, who the fuck am I talking to? What's going on? I'm pissed. But you can also especially understand someone who's like, I haven't talked to anyone in 1,000 years. How dare you? And it immediately feels like a personal attack. Like, why would you pick me? And often, in many cases, they didn't pick you for any reason. It became more of an infatuation later. It was a whim. But maybe not in this case. Yeah, no. So essentially, it gets let out that she seems like a wacko initially, and that her husband didn't die. She did lie. And she's really nice in this moment. Like, her desire to want to apologize and seem so sincere. Like, she comes off as like, well, like I said, sincere, which is great. She doesn't seem totally like a wacko, but a lot of wackos can hide themselves, and a lot of TV wackos, this is for sure how it starts out. You feel guilty for them. But like I said, Linda Cardellini is just such a sweet, immediately likable person. I thought they did a great, like, no one else could play this part. This is very complex of a part. So the first reveal is not only did her husband not die, and she's clearly a crazy person, you learn that she's more grieving for her, circumstance of miscarriages, unfortunately. She's had like 5 of them, and her last one was 5 months. I can't even imagine. That's so emotional on a lot of levels. And it starts to feel like Steve, her ex-husband, who even puts a restraining order on her, kind of seems like an asshole. That they went through this relationship, and that's how he responds to grieving, to not only break up with her, but ostracize her like she's fucking crazy. And we do have confirmation that they really did try to have kids together. They really were together for a very long time, especially when you consider the time it takes before people make that decision to have children. I'm sure they were together for like 5 or 8 or 10 years before any of this. So very sad, very devastating. And then this is when the big twist comes in. This is kind of like the defining point of the show. We get a moment where we see our girl, Judy, going to a storage unit. And in that storage unit is a car that's got cracked headlight, cracked window. And it quickly gets pieced together that motherfucking Judy hit Jen's husband, Ted. And she's clearly going out of her way, for some sick, morbid reason, it is what it feels like initially, to be friends with her. You don't know what her end game is. And, I mean, right away, it kind of makes you more feel like you both have sympathy, like, but you also wonder, like, are her miscarriages or all this trauma, anything she says is real? Also, like, my first theory when it first, like, happened was that maybe she was dating Ted, and she psychotically took him down. She wants to eventually take down the rest of the family. Like, what is her end game? It's not good. Well, the strongest point about the show that I thought that they did an amazing job with is she keeps being traumatized by the fact that she hits Ted's husband. Spoiler alert, it was an accident. She has no relationship to Ted. She didn't know Ted at all. It was just a complete unfortunate accident. And every time she relives this accident, the story gets a little longer. We get a little more of like what happened that night. So the first big reveal is that she hit Ted. The second big reveal is that what it looks like initially of her trying to break back into her old place that the locks have been changed into, her trying to bother Steve, her ex-husband or old husband or situation at his office, ends up in him trying to warn him about her now being involved with Jen. And this is the important part. When we get that flashback again, it's revealed that motherfucking Steve was there. Steve was even the one that helped her hide the car, so he's kind of a part of it now. And you could question like, well, he technically wasn't driving the car and da-da-da-da-da. But when you got to get to know him more and more as a character and what even happened that night and how everyone responded, it starts to become a thing where it's like, no, honey, you are more involved with this than you let on. So that's like the big hangover that Judy's living with them. Why is she doing it? You get the vibe pretty quickly that actually Judy's not fucking crazy. That she's someone innocent who had a terrible accident happen and obviously didn't want to go to jail. So there was the initial just wanting to hide it. But it ate her up inside that she most likely probably ruined this family. And she just couldn't compulsory stop. And it kind of was like one thing got out of hand after the other. It kind of was like an accidental like, fuck, what's happening? I don't get the vibe she was plotting to live with her. You know what I mean? She just wanted to see what she could do to make her feel happier. Now, as they become closer friends, it goes from Jen being so obsessed with what happened to her husband, Ted, and like wanting to get justice for him and feeling like everything isn't right in the world and grieving, to finding out her husband was like one of the biggest fucking dicks and that she kind of fucking hates him. She hates how he mistreated her, lied to her. She hates that he left her with like her kids to take care of. And like honestly, she's just mad above all that she still probably loves him and is, you know, generally misses him. I mean, this show does such a good job capturing that complexity. Like I love moments like that are really complex where like Steve will say like, tell Judy to her face that she's crazy, and she'll just be like, don't talk to me like that. And he'll be like, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. And you realize how things can blow up out of proportion without the context, the tones, meeting the people, and stuff like that. So what ends up happening one day is Jen, and this is the terrible thing for Jen, and talking about the layers being pulled back, every time she remotely tries to get out of her comfort zone and do things that people implore her to like dive into to help her with the grieving process, it just bites her in the ass. I feel like subconsciously she's telling herself, like, what's the fucking point? Look at what happens to me. Maybe I am right. I should close everyone off and be constantly sarcastic and so on and so forth. Which, like, can you blame her? So she decides to be loving to her dipshit number one son. I fucking hated him. Son, and play video games with him because he used to play video games with his dad. But on there, she gets a rather unexpected sexy message about a random person wanting his cock. And I gotta tell you, when that one went to commercial and you got the vibe that he was like cheating in some way, I was immediately having my heart pump out of my chest because they leave it in such a way that when and they never even explore this topic for a second, but my first thought was because it was kind of like a kid's game they were on, that it was something disgusting and like, I'm not even going to go into it, but you get what I'm hinting there. And I was like, no, please don't go in this direction. And they didn't. He was just regular old cheating with some young girl with, as Jen puts it, perfect warm tits, Bambi, which I would be like, is her real name Bambi? Who coincidentally has their name on a necklace and then also uses their screen name in a video game? That pretty much never happens unless you're like a Twitch streamer, but most Twitch streamers end up having fake names anyways, aliases. So, she finds out that he was cheating on her, and it gets so much fucking worse. Not only was he cheating on her, but he was cheating on her for like a year and a half. As in, you know, he was really in a serious relationship, potentially even loved this girl. I mean, it sounded like they were saying it to each other. So that's, you know, I don't know if you've ever been cheated on, but like there's many different layers of cheating, I imagine. And while it's all uniformly bad and makes you not want to be with the person and distrust them, I feel like there's an extra like cutting deep into who you are when not only have you been with that person for like a good, 10, 20 years, but they have developed an emotional relationship with someone else. Well, anyways, this is where it gets fucking worse. Like I said, the onion just keeps getting peeled and peeled and peeled. Jen at one point tells Judy this one-off comment that she has fake boobs because her mom died when she was younger of cancer. They'll probably explore that in season 2. I kind of just get that vibe. And actually, coincidentally, I think Christina Applegate struggled with breast cancer, so like, good for her. And she wanted to, because she had the gene, she pre-removed her breasts just to prevent anything, and so she put fake boobs in. And you end up finding out that Bambi was not just some fucking asshole, which I love that my girl Judy pointed out, like, hey, let's not blame the girl, it was the guy doing the cheating. And that statement couldn't be more true, because you find out that Bambi thinks that when she was dating Ted, that it was just them, that his wife died, and he even killed off Jen, saying that she had breast cancer. Like, you couldn't have said anything else? That's so sad and disgusting. And it's only gonna get fucking worse. Get ready for this. So eventually there's a lot of resentment from her kid, which, by the way, holy shit, I know everyone grieves differently, and it's very common that a lot of kids, when they lose a parent, will kind of act out. But holy fucking Christ, this is one of those moments where, so he was one of those spoiled kids where, like, if he didn't get what he wants, he'll go to his grandma who will shower him with gifts. What do you do with these type of kids who have a backup system of support and being spoiled? Like, these are not bad parents. Jen was doing a good job disciplining him, but what do you do when, you can't hit him? It's not legal. You can't hit him. I think he'd shut up real fucking fast if she could punch him in the face. She was punching everyone else in the face, which made me laugh. So what gets worse about the situation is the reason when she blames herself for the night that Ted left for the hit and run, because they had this big fight and the kid witnessed this, and he and this is where it gets even worse, and he blames the mom for this situation. Now I'm going to tell you what this happened, but I'm going to explain that I have a very strong belief that, like, I completely disagree with all these parents that won't tell their kids very critical information because they'll be like, oh, well, they were just a kid. And I go, but they're blaming you for X, Y, and Z, or they're doing this X, Y, and Z. And if they just knew the information, you could save them from a lot of grief, or just have things be more comprehensible. Like, it's fucked up that you're just taking it or letting your kids see you poorly because you view them young. You're ruining everything. Trust me. Just be honest with them to a certain point. And in this purpose, I feel like Jen should have told her kids, like, well, your father was a piece of shit. So when they were having a fight at that point, at that night, she had not been touched in a year and a half romantically. Or sexually, I mean. And it wasn't purely their relationship was just falling apart, just like a normal, so many things happen, someone becomes more of a workaholic, whatever. What happened is she got I don't know what it's called, but it's basically when your tubes get tied. And at the time, she didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, she did this, like a year and a half ago? I think her youngest kid is probably like 10. Her oldest kid's probably like 15. I imagine you're not having any more kids, and especially, like, not age shaming, but, like, usually at that age, most people have decided they're not going to have any more kids. That's not where their head's at anymore. And he basically didn't want to sexually be with her anymore. He got really mad at her. And I'm going to play devil's advocate here, but I'm mostly focused on the disgusting part of it. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm already on her side. But I can understand from the perspective of a loved one, you find out someone you love got, like, major surgery. So, okay, let me paint a picture here to point out the good and the bad. So let's say you've agreed with your husband you don't want to have kids, and then he goes out and gets a vasectomy without telling you. You'd be kind of just emotionally shook by being like, hey, we're like together, like, I feel weird that you didn't tell me. Shouldn't I be a part of that? Yes, it's your body, but, like, I feel weird that you didn't even tell me, and more fixated on that. But the major part is you already agreed that you weren't going to have children. They got this vasectomy. You're not even mad that you're not going to have children. That has been agreed upon. Do you see what I'm saying? But then this is the reality. Not only is it her body, it's her decision, but for him to want to possibly leave her for someone younger and being disgusted. She said she even was made to feel disgusted, and he was so mad at her, clearly, specifically because she couldn't have any more children. It makes it feel like So that's why you were only with me? Is this medieval times? Like, I already first of all, if we're gonna get pragmatic about it, like, I already gave you 2 fucking kids. Ew, like, what happens in my older years when I can't give you any more kids? Are you just gonna leave me? How many children do you need? Like, what a fucking crazy psycho. Like, so many levels of asshole. And it gets even worse when you get to know about I'm sorry, I keep on calling her Christine, Jen's background history, because you learn that at one point, when they were younger, he was a musician and she was a dancer. And she was really good, but his career at the given time was taking off, but I guess it didn't take off well enough. And instead of him making the right choice to go out and support the family maybe another way or whatever, she ended up getting into real estate and saving the family. She was clearly the breadwinner and he was the stay-at-home dad. Now, he was still a musician, and I have a strong belief that, like, if one person, no matter the gender, wants to make or is making more of the money, there's no reason the other person has to only be a homemaker. I'm very anti that. I mean, who cares if one person's making $100,000 a year and the other person's only making $20,000? That other person's income and life existence is just as valid. You are not defined by the income you make. But it is pretty fucked up that he basically put her in a position where she had to sacrifice all his dreams. He basically got everything he wanted. He could be at home with the kids. He could work on a career that technically wasn't really going anywhere. And then to cheat on her, basically demand more kids of her. I mean, it takes what shouldn't be anything to be judged, just like a normal happy family making their own decisions, to being like, you are a asshole. Such an asshole. Which I wonder how other people feel, because I'm sure there's many people who are in positions where, like, someone in their life has passed away and they're like, I fucking hate them, but I don't know how to hate the person that's dead, and it's all complex and crazy. So anyways, so we got Judy having killed Ted, Stephen being Ben there and helping her move. Along the way, Steve is, like, fucking with her head, sleeping with her on and off. It's so bad. At one point, Steve implies that they potentially might get back together, and she, at one point, thinks she's going to have children with him, like she's pregnant again. And when she goes there, another woman pops up, so he was lying, he was seeing other people, and he calls her a client and basically is like, call me in 9 months if it works, I can't go through this again. Which, on one hand, like, I get the whole idea of, like, it's emotional go through miscarriages as a couple, but, like, let's be real here, he handled it very dick-like, and I think he kind of almost in a weird way wasn't unlike Ted with the whole, like, I don't want to be with you because you can't supply me children, and, like, I know it's important for some people, but to treat them almost like cattle, you get what I'm saying. Anyways, during that time period, Judy ends up hitting up and becoming friends with Nick Prager? I'm just going to call him Nick. He's played by Brendan Scott, which, oh my god, eyelashes for days. Not only is so cute, but him and, like, Pastor Wayne, who's played by Keong Sim, who killed it, by the way. I gotta be honest with you, I've never met a member in the religious community that, like, was that zen and genuinely helpful without mentioning God every 2 seconds. It was amazing. But both Nick's character and Pastor Wayne had, like, very sweet, happy, loving, neutral vibes, but with a realistic response when things weren't great. Like, they are not unmovable. They're not just meant to be the straight man to your crazy Grace and Frankie kind of responses. You know what I mean? So they were great. But anyways, he ends up getting basically dumped by Judy, which is so hard to watch. It's the most, like, because you really end up liking them in just the few episodes they're together, and when you see her then to not only get rejected by Steve, but find out she's not pregnant, but in fact going into early menopause. I mean, oh, so many fucking layers of being upset. So now we're coming to the end. It gets really crazy at this point. Eventually it does come out, and Judy can't take it anymore, and she admits to Jen what happened. I know, right? I love that it happens all in this first season. And before this happens, before Judy admits this, she tries to turn herself in beforehand. But when she goes to the cop, she kind of chickens out and ends up telling them about the fact, and this is again, when we talk about twists and curveballs, Steve, in actuality, is a money launderer. I don't know if that's the term. He money laundries for wealthy Greek officials and stuff. And she can give a paper trail, and she'll work with the police officer and do that. Now, I did not get the impression, again, we'll find out more, that they did a really good job in this series of, like, you're never quite sure. Like, for the most part, you feel like you can trust Judy, but what do you do when her actions say otherwise? I mean, I've actually known friends complex like this that really were good, but it's so hard to make an argument for them because they do a lot of things that oppose that idea and personality. But anyways, I can't tell if she really was like, it was her plan all along and she just wanted to sell it to Steve, or out of nervousness of right away not being able to express her own feelings. She was going to eventually express it, and she just kind of panicked and ended up talking about Steve. You know what I mean? Committing to the lie. Anyway, so when Jen ends up finding out from Judy, she goes to turn her in herself, but essentially the police officer is like, listen, we can't get to that. We can't get to any, accusing her or anything until this other case is taken care of. And of course, I'm sure this is a good payday for her. And in reality, like, no crime is more important than the other, but this financial type crime would be like more of a focus for this type of police force. So they want to work with her and get information that can put Steve behind bars, but more specifically figure out where money's being laundered, like on a more like FBI, CIA level than a single hit and run case, which is fucked up, but it's true. So Jen feels obviously frustrated and goes and pulls out a gun, which the whole series she's saying she hates guns, but she's gotten to a point she's so defensive, she's so uptight, she doesn't feel safe anymore, she doesn't know who was in her house. She's having a completely reasonable response. Judy, on the other hand, while she has given up Steve, is feeling extremely suicidal. She tries to apologize one more time to Jen. She even tries to step in front of a car. She's apologizing to Ted. She's just like, from day one, you realize, has been a really good person who just went through a terrible thing, and she didn't handle it the best. I completely agree. But I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's posing the question of like, what if you could come to love the same person who you would have in any other circumstance hated? Someone who could ruin your life in that way. And there was enough opportunity given for Judy and Jen to really get to know each other. And this is where the moment gets really powerful. Basically, because of the little son being an asshole, even going to live with his overly criticizing grandma, or for Jen, her mother-in-law, who's like a bigger tycoon real estate agent. He ends up moving in with her for a little bit, being a bitch. That he eventually moves back, but it's just like I said, he's a little bitch. He's dipshit one. And she has to sacrifice a lot of her beliefs because she's worried about paying the bills because her real estate partner has left her for being so angry. She ends up working for her mother-in-law because she will do what she needs to do to pay the bills. And everything's kind of becoming a thing where she wants to pay for... She convinces Steve to buy some of the houses, but his money gets pulled out. So technically she didn't sell them. She's still in a difficult position. And you end up finding out that Judy took out all of her husband's money and gave it to a check to the family. So it just proves even more, and Jen does see this, that Judy, no matter the complex situation, really is still to the bitter end truly fighting her family, showing her intentions. So Steve is there, and he starts to get kind of aggressive and accidentally admits he was also in the car. And it's so funny when he selfishly is like, he was like, it was the worst moment of my life. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Being sarcastic, because obviously it was her husband that died. He's like, thank you. But Steve ends up getting kind of aggressive with her when she's like pissed at him about not only being there and basically admitting they were there, but she realizes what happened that night was, yes, Judy hit Ted, but she tried to go back. She tried to help or be involved in some way and not be a hit and quote-unquote run. But Steve was the one that told her to leave. Steve hid the cars. Steve was the one that was more selfish and concerning to himself and not for the lives of others. And because she spent enough time with Judy, she even says, Jen says, Judy would have stayed. She holds up a gun. She tells him to leave. And I'm thinking this is going to be the focal point for season 2. But right when Judy is about to kill herself, going through a bit difficult situation, somehow survives, she gets a call finally from Jen saying, come home, Judy. So it's acknowledged again. Judy, this is your home. We're cool. Come home. And when she comes home, she sees her husband shot dead in the fucking pool. Oh my God. I loved that choice. That was such a great fucking choice. Because you really come to love their friendship, no matter how back and forth it is and the secrets and everything. that the idea of them being at odds sucks. This solidified it for me. Season 2, they're totally going to be on each other's side. But we got a couple things going on that I'm theory-wise thinking is going to happen. So one, we have the idea that, first of all, this is one theory. I think, in the first season, they kept going back and showing what happened with the car accident and stretching it more and more and more. And the more you find information out, and they always say you should be honest up front, but sometimes people, and this is like kind of manipulative, but you can't blame. I'll give an example. So you meet a girl, and you don't know it, but she has a kid. And she's afraid of scaring you away. She wants you to like the idea of being with her before you meet the kid. Maybe you'll be more open-minded. To be fair, she's not fucking wrong. But also to be fair, that's not right. She isn't just upfront honest and is like, by the way, I have a 4-year-old kid, just so you know before going into this. And so as the series goes along and people get to know each other better and what they're like, when the important information gets divulged, you view it a little bit differently because you've known this person better. So I'm wondering if in season 2, instead of a car and the constant back and forth of the car idea being stretched out more and more and more, it'll be focused on the moment when she was going to shoot Steven. Because the thing with Steve is we didn't see him get shot by her. She for sure did shoot him. She was the only one with a gun. But we don't know if maybe he tried to grab it. Did she react too harshly and just shoot him right away? Because they keep talking about the whole series that she's too quick to anger. We don't really know what happened. So that'll be an important focal point that I hope they do use as kind of like, that's the, tagline or idea behind Dead to Me, is that idea of the constant flashbacks and you don't really know what kind of happened in that moment. But we'll either have, are they going to cover it up, like bury his body somewhere, and that's what they will be in together, that happened? Or, because remember, there's this huge amount of money they desperately need. Are they going to cash or not? This is important. Or are they going to report the murder? I'm surprised at this point. It probably took Judy a little while to get to Jen. How are Jen's kids, like especially the teenager, not running to the backyard being like, Mom, what happened? And then seeing a dead body. I'm very curious where this is going to go. I'll be okay to be, like, if no one pops up, that little bit of like bullshit. Like neighbors would open their doors if they heard a gunshot. You know what I mean? Guns are loud. I would be okay if no one woke up because just to get the story moving on. Or are they going to report that he did die, but then lie and say that Steve tried to attack her, and they will still be in it together because essentially Judy will be dealing with the grief of having lied, but also, again, lying with Jen. So those are my two theories of where it will go. I'm really excited about where it will go. I think this is a great fucking series. And I'm trying to think if there's anything left I want to add. Yeah, I was just overall blown away. And kind of in the end, both of their husbands were cheaters, only with them for the sake of child bearing. They did a good job. Like, technically, if you broke down, like, the facts, they're very similar. They're very different ways of handling it, but it's a really complex bullshit thing people have to go through. So, yeah, anyways, that's just a side note. So anyways, guys, please subscribe today, tell a friend, follow, and let me know what you think's going to happen in the next season 2 on Twitter, and consider becoming a Patreon supporter today. I love you in the most platonic way possible. Bye!